Mullin of Oklahoma. So, Senator, there are significant changes to the bill. You have, first of all, Josh Hawley and Tom Tillis have concerns about whatever changes are being made to Medicaid and whether that's going to affect people. You need to satisfy them, presumably, to get their votes. And then there's also the parliamentarian made this rule about Medicaid as relates to rural hospitals, to shorthand it. It sounds like there's a lot of work to do still in the bill.
Right.
Is it realistic to have a vote on it tomorrow?
Yeah, there isn't as much work as you think. 85% of the bill that the House sent over, we're pretty much taking. It's the 15% that we're still negotiating, and the parliamentarian had kicked out some things. You know, we have a very narrow window for your listeners. The Byrd rule, as we call the Byrd bath, it can only deal with two things. We can only deal with mandatory spending and taxes, so basically revenue. So if anything is perceived to be policy and doesn't fit inside those windows, then the parliamentarian will remove. The House doesn't have to apply by that, the Senate does. Yeah. So taking that out does a couple of things. One, when they took out some of the stuff that the House sent over, because as I said, they don't have to deal with the Byrd rule, the deficit reduction that we're trying to get, our target number is around $1.6 trillion in reducing deficit spending, which will be the most deficit reduction spending that any Congress has ever taken on. It's put us in a deficit because about $250 billion, I'm using rough numbers, these are round numbers, but roughly around $250 billion was removed. So we've got to make that up. And how you start looking at it, you really got to start looking at the fraud and the waste that's in Medicare or in Medicaid, and seeing how you can do that without disrupting health care for especially rural hospitals. I'm very rural, you know, and so rural is where I've lived my whole life. And
Tulsa's the big city to you.
Tahlequah's a big city to us. For everybody's laughing this from Oklahoma to understand that one. Yeah. But so we don't want to do that. And plus, rural hospitals are the lifeblood of a lot of the counties. I mean, not only are they the largest employer, but you lose your county hospital. Your workers' comp for manufacturing, everything.
You're making my point for me. Yeah. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. It's not really realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. But see, but what I'm saying is there's not that much work to do. It's just making sure what you're doing, you're getting the numbers correctly. And we're able to do that. We've been discussing this. Today was our 51st meeting on this as a body as a whole. We have been working on this since September. We knew we were going to win the election in September, and we knew that reconciliation was coming. Since November, we've been really going after it. So we've been negotiating this till really we're blue in the face. It's to the decision point. How are we going to put it in? We had contingency plans. We knew a lot of the stuff the House was putting in there was realistically was going to get Byrd bathed out. And so we already had, we had going into this final stretch, we had contingency plans going from A, B, C, and all the way to D.
Okay. So just to explain to our viewers at home, the reason that they have to do all this with the Byrd bath is in order to introduce the bill, to have just simple majority vote and not have the 60-vote threshold that the Senate normally has. That's the difference between the House and Senate. And Byrd is B-Y-R-D, an homage to the late Senator Robert Byrd. Right. I want to ask you about Hawley and Tillis's concerns on the Medicaid cuts. Will this bill make sure, will it guarantee that those who are eligible for Medicaid, American citizens, eligible, are able to get it?
And eligible, yes. We're cutting out the fraud and waste. Here's an interesting statistic. 35 million people inside the United States fit into the poverty level, but we have 70 million people in Medicaid. You got to ask yourself the question, how? And because Medicaid was designed for those that were in poverty. So how do we have 35 more million people, over double what we have in poverty level according to statistics?
It's all fraud?
No, I don't think it's all fraud, but you got to say how much of it is fraud. And we have the trajectory of climbing of the Medicaid. What I mean by climbing is the way we're spending for Medicaid is it doesn't have a gradual slope. It's going straight up a ladder. So we have got to figure out what cuts to have, but we're not looking, anyone that qualifies for Medicaid today qualifies, will still qualify after we pass the bill. We're just getting the fraud and waste out of it.
So there's this other negotiation going on with the state and local taxes called SALT.
SALT.
It has to do with basically people who represent big tax states, such as New York, to a lesser extent California, and whether or not they can deduct that on their taxes. Republican Congressman Nick LaLota of New York says—
deduct it from their federal taxes.
From their federal taxes, yes. Right.
Yes.
Congressman Nick LaLota says your proposal to maintain the $40,000 cap on deductions from the House bill, but lower the income threshold for that, is not a true compromise. That's his view, not mine. Take a listen to what he told reporters earlier this week.
Compromise is a two-way street. If the Senate wants to try to change one of the variables in the House's salt component, and specifically decrease one, it needs to increase another. Otherwise, I'm a no. The Salt Caucus is a no. The Senate thinks they could water down the House deal. That ain't going to work for me.
You know these House guys. You used to be one of them. You know the Salt Caucus can kill the bill. Is this going to be an obstacle?
This is how things are negotiating. That was 2 or 3 days ago. We were negotiating with the Treasury last night until 10 o'clock. The SALT guys, Nick wasn't there, but we've got language now that is really acceptable. In fact, I can't speak for them all, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to be able to find a good landing spot. We're still trying to massage it in the Senate side, but we're going to find the solution. I've always said this: it's not going to be a deal. Not everybody's going to love it, and a deal is something everybody loves or can accept. This is going to be a situation where we're trying to give the SALT guys that want it and the SALT guys that oppose it enough reasons to support it, but maybe not love it. And that's called negotiating. And we're at that spot. I think we're really, really close to closing this out probably tonight. And that's one of the sticky points. So the two sticky points, which SALT is what I've been negotiating for 3 weeks now, hard, intensively negotiating. And I've had great conversations with Nick and all these guys. The president has weighed in. Secretary Bessett has been phenomenal working with us. The speaker, Leader Thune. We've all been engaged, and I feel like we're going to get to a solution this evening. And this is one of those things. We've talked about it. We've talked about everybody's concerns. But at some point, we got to make a decision. And the decision is, what can we get 51 votes on in the House or in the Senate, and what is the magic number in the House? Typically, we say 218, but you saw the last time they passed the major bill out of there.
215, 214.
Yeah.
Senator Mark Wayne Mullin of Oklahoma, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The U.S. Supreme Court